Hello and welcome to knitting lessons, and in this mini series we're going to be learning how to knit this, which is the Lempi sweater by Novita, and it should be in Higgy wool, but I don't know if that's how you say the word out loud, but I'm going to be doing it in Millennium wool. And there's lots of recommendations on my blog which I've already published about yarns to use and all the things you need to buy so you can knit this sweater, and all the circumferences so you can work out what size you want to make. So today we'll start with thinking about our stitch gauge. So what that means is we always want to ensure that the jumper we are knitting is going to turn out the size we expect it to. So if we were to knit this exactly as it says, even then sometimes it can come out a slightly different size. Maybe our stitches are a bit more tight than others, so it comes out a bit smaller, or maybe our stitches are more loose than others, so it comes out a bit bigger. So we want to know that with our stitching and with the wool we've got, it's going to turn out the size we expect. So what a gauge swatch is it tells you a certain stitch to do, a certain number of stitches and rows, and that will come out as a 10 centimetre square piece of knitting. So with this one, it says that with our larger needles, and our larger needles are our 10mm ones, we should do 9 stitches and 13 rows in stockingette stitch, so stocking stitch, to get the 10 centimetre square. So that's what I've got here. I've done mine just now. So I've got my 9 stitches and I've got my 13 rows, and that's stockingette stitch, so that's where we do a knit row and then a purl row and then a knit row and a purl row. Make sure you check my videos to have a look at what to do about knit and purl. I've explained it in a previous blog post, and I'll make sure there's lots and lots of links. And then we get our tape measure and we measure it to make sure that it's what we expect. So yeah, this one is 10 centimetres across, lovely, and it should be 10 centimetres tall. So ignoring the cast on and the cast off, then yes, it's 10 centimetres tall. So I know that with my yarn, with my tension, this jumper is going to come out roughly the size we expect. Now, if it's going to come out slightly bigger or smaller, you might want to consider doing a different size of jumper. Sometimes that will help. If it's going to come out too wide, then you might want to pick out a smaller jumper, and if it's going to come out too narrow, you might want to pick out a larger jumper size. If it's going to be too tall or short, in my experience that doesn't tend to matter too much, because when we knit, we usually knit up to a certain length to get to the armpits. So it's going to be the same length of body, the same length of sleeve anyway. Sometimes the armpit holes might be a little bit bigger or smaller, so maybe consider if it's going to be really small. If you've got 8 centimetres rather than 10, you might have to consider using bigger or smaller needles. So you might want to practice this swatch again with 1mm bigger or smaller needles to see if it comes out as you want. And another helpful thing about why these swatches are important is that it shows you what your texture is going to look like when it's on. So when it's all stitched up, I know this jumper is going to have a nice thick texture, not too many holes in it, it's not really gappy and baggy, it's not really tight, it's got a nice even tension. And so I'll be pleased if I had a jumper that had that kind of texture, and I can see how thick the jumper's going to be. It's going to be lovely and thick. So it teaches us a lot about what we're knitting, and that's why it's really important that we start by doing the gauge swatch. Once you've done that and you are happy with the size of needles and yarn that you're using, then we can come on to actually starting our knitting. So have a go and let me know how you get on. Let me know if you've got any questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next video where we talk about how to start this jumper. Bye.